Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Relationship Circle podcast. I'm your host, Beck Thompson, and this podcast is all about showing you how to stop running in circles, ditch those dating games, and let your inner compass lead the way. Today, we have Flora Ong. Is that how you say your last name? Should have checked that before we jumped on.
Thank you. It's pretty easy. 3 letters. I went down from 10 letters to 3. So I figure it should be easier for people.
That's so fascinating. My last name before I got married, because I'm Thompson now, which is very simple, was Wilszewski. And so it's such a long last name. So
exactly.
I feel you.
Something like that.
Let me introduce you so everyone knows how fabulous you are. As a certified life coach, integrated attachment specialist, and one of the top 5 relationship coaches to watch, Flora Ong is dedicated to empowering individuals and helping them achieve their relationship goals. With a deep understanding of attachment styles and subconscious reprogramming, Flora's focus is on breaking self-sabotaging behaviors in order to cultivate a healthy and lasting sense of self that leads to a deep and authentic connections. Through her step-by-step method, she's helped hundreds of people break free from patterns that have stopped them from finding love. Very exciting. Everything that we're going to dive deep into. So I would love to dive into like what got you into this work, how you kind of got started with being a dating relationship coach, and
I got divorced in 2016, separated, and then started dating and got on Tinder, and I was like, oh, there's so many people here. This is going to be so easy. And right. And I really thought like I'd, be married within the year or whatever. And then I started to face my own patterns and my own demons. And I felt like I was like 16 years old. I was like 38 with 2 kids. And I was like, why do I feel head over heels for somebody I spoke to 3 times? And I'm obsessed with this person now. Like, this is weird. And then I did it again. And then I did it again. And then again. And I then started wondering really what's wrong with me, like why am I getting so attached to people that I barely really have, enough of a relationship with? And in trying to understand that, I started to understand myself and, come into this work basically through that because it was so difficult. And I think at least I heard him say it. Do you know who Mark Groves is?
Yes.
Create the Love. Yeah. Make your mess your message. And I was like, it's me.
I love that so much. So you found yourself kind of repeating these patterns over and over again. And I'm assuming you see that in the work that you do with people now.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we're all starting to recognize it, or at least the little corner of my internet, people are really starting, I think it's becoming like unavoidable. I really think there's just this collective movement towards like seeing things a little more clearly now, and you kind of like can't hide because if you're not even seeing your own patterns, you're noticing somebody else's patterns. You know? And for whatever reason, I think it's just becoming more and more obvious and you can't hide from it anymore. People, we all repeat patterns based on our childhood wounding, based on our childhood circumstances, based on how our parents treated us. And no matter how much we're like, I'll never be like my mom, you find yourself doing in a lot of ways very similar things. And it's all a reaction, to something you've completely forgotten about a lot of times.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that because I often hear people say that I never wanted to be like them, and then I realized I am them. Like I'm doing exactly the same things that they were doing.
Yeah. And you do everything. You dress differently. You move to a different country. You marry what you looks like a different person, but what you find is the dynamics are the same.
Yeah.
And so that's where it gets really like, I thought I did everything not to be like that, but here I am.
Yeah, doing all the external stuff but not looking at what's actually happening. Yeah. What are some of the kind of patterns that you see, like when clients come to you, what are some of the kind of repeating patterns that you see show up for them?
Well, I mean, as you know, I'm an attachment specialist, right? So a lot of that stuff comes in the form of people's attachment styles, right? Where they're either shut down during, at points of intimacy where they should be really leaning in, or people who get really activated by the fact that somebody's going to like not calling them back or not texting them back. And they get really nervous and worried, and those are the two big ones, right? Between the anxious and the avoidant. So it's things like that. Like, why do I get so attached so quickly? Or why every time I get close to somebody, do I want to run away?
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So those are the like big, kind of big patterns that I deal with, and helping people explore and understand why they did end up feeling those things,
Yeah. And I'm guessing, like, when I have clients come to me that talk about this stuff, it's very real for them. Like that when they're trying to get away from the relationship, there's so much evidence that they have there about why they should run. Or when people are like, when they're wanting someone to text them back and they're fully involved in that, there's so much evidence there for them to be part of that and be involved. Yeah.
I just today was wrapping up with this avoidant client who, in the first several sessions, he almost had me convinced that he should leave, Yeah. But he didn't leave. He stuck through, and he realized that was really the medicine he needed to stick through, to figure it out, to be able to use his voice rather than run. And what he found was when he was able to use his voice, everything just completely shifted and changed. He felt different. The reaction to him was different. The result of the argument, what would have been an argument, was completely different. And he just like unlocked a new level of being, you know what I mean? That he had he never had access to before. And it was like, it's a wild ride with some of these clients, because you kind of see them through this whole experience of relationship and coming to these awarenesses. And that's just like the greatest for me, just like,
Me too.
Like I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I had a client today that was like, I feel like I've built my self-worth so much now. And I can say, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. He was like, for me, there's nothing better than when women build their self-worth.
Yeah.
But, and that's because of who I mainly work with. But I just love when people are able to like stand in their power or set a boundary, or particularly when boundaries are really scary, like when they're able to set a boundary and they see that it doesn't backfire on them and the person actually respects them and the relationship changes in a really positive way from it. Yeah. It's so beautiful.
And you feel like, I know when I've had these experiences, then you just feel so stupid. You're like, why didn't I do that the whole time?
Yeah.
It's like, it seems so simple to some of us to just be able to use your voice and just say how you feel. And, but for people who it scares them to do that, it is a very real fear. And the fear literally locks up their body and doesn't allow them to speak, Yes. And so when the fear is that strong, when it feels so real, it's really hard to do what seems really simple to some of us,
Yeah. Yeah. And so what would you say, like, if there's clients or people that are listening that are experiencing that fear and it is kind of stopping them from moving forward, like how can they navigate that?
Well, it's with clients who are avoidant, right? Who lean avoidant, who do have that problem. It's important that when they try to express themselves, that they're doing it with somebody that they feel safe with. Because if you're in your avoidance and you have no other support around it and you say the thing to the wrong person, you finally open your mouth. You finally like use your voice. You're finally like, all right, I'm going to try it this time. I'm going to do it no matter what. And you say it to the wrong person and you get the wrong reaction. It could send you much deeper into an avoidant state, because then you're like, you see, this is why I never talk. This is why I don't bother, because it never works anyway.
I've got even more proof.
Right. So it's important to start small and start with people that you feel safe with, saying things that are slightly uncomfortable, but, aren't going to really mess you up, and building that trust that like you can speak, that people will accept you, that it won't, a lot of avoidant clients, interestingly enough, are embarrassed or feel wrong about telling someone that they need some space.
I just want to quickly pause the episode here to tell you about my upcoming free Love Unlocked Masterclass. Maybe the reason you haven't found love is because you feel you aren't worthy of love you deserve. And I'm here to tell you that you are, and I want to give you the steps on how you can start loving yourself first to attract that worthy love into your life. In the masterclass, I cover 3 steps straight away, which are uncovering past patterns, understanding emotional needs, and learning how to communicate and set boundaries to amplify your self-worth. Details can be found in the show notes, and I cannot wait to see you there.
Like even just saying, you know what, I need some space. Let me process. Even that, they're like, nah, I can't say that. That's weird, or why do I need space like that? What's wrong with me that I need space? Like, why doesn't she or he need space? I'm weird because I need space, And so even that to them becomes like a difficult thing to say. And that's oftentimes why they don't say it, because they think that it's weird or wrong or makes them bad or stupid or all these different wounds that we have, And so just saying that is in and of itself like a step forward, and already a step in the right direction. Because as soon as you create clarity for your partner, now you can now you're like negotiating,
Yes.
But when you're just silent, there's, what are we doing? Like, who am I talking to? I'm talking to a wall.
Yeah. Yeah. And then everyone's just assuming about what to do and how to act. And And what
making
about
assumptions about what you're thinking?
Yes.
And
they've got to fill the gaps, right? If there's no information there, they've got to fill those gaps with something. Yeah. And what if they're more anxiously attached and they're stuck with making a move?
Oh, anxious people aren't stuck in making moves. They make too many moves.
So true.
They're on the opposite side. So they actually have to, hold themselves back more. And, that's its own struggle too, because they're desperate for that connection. They're desperate for that fix, if you will, like almost like a drug in some ways. And so for the anxious person, the work is in sitting in that discomfort of not doing the thing, or not reaching out, or not checking social media to see what they're up to, or, and it's really sitting with that discomfort and learning what it's trying to tell you. It's sending you a message. You just don't want to listen. You just keep distracting yourself by, looking outside of yourself.
That is everybody re-listen to that, because it's really important to be uncomfortable. I can't stress. It's why I love things when people do things like fasting or that extra cold water or something that's uncomfortable, because it gets your body used to being uncomfortable, and it's something you can manage on your own. And because sometimes uncomfortable feelings are the hardest to navigate for people.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And all of those exercises, exercise too, right? Like, who the hell wants to exercise? I mean, I feel great after I exercise. Well, it's really hard every time I do it, But it's also part of building that window of tolerance, that ability to handle discomfort, that ability to handle pain, pain. Right.
Yes. Talk to me about that, because this is something I talk to nearly every single client about, is the window of tolerance. So tell people what that is, because quite often when I say it to people, they're like, I don't know what the window of tolerance is. They've never kind of heard of it. So,
So the window of tolerance is what you're able to tolerate without your nervous system becoming dysregulated, right? And I had previous to this work, like this much level of tolerance.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I can't make it any smaller.
It's like less than a centimeter.
Yeah. Like a millimeter, maybe.
Millimeter, yeah.
I was like, I still will say that I'm an emotional person. I definitely am emotionally led, but back then I was reactive. I wasn't even emotionally led. I was just reactive. You know, you said something, there was no, and I'm like from New York. I have a, kind of Soviet background, so I am not like somebody who's hiding in the shadows and like going to be quiet to make other people comfortable. And, I'm going to say what I think and what I feel. And so, yeah, I mean, I was very reactive and had no ability to be uncomfortable at all, and so doing this kind of work grows your window of tolerance. So now those things that I was reactive to from childhood, like those parts of you that you're just like, I don't know. I reacted. I couldn't help it. There was nothing I could do. There was no time to think in between. That's what a lot of people tell me, that they have no time to think. It's just like an immediate reaction. I no longer do that, and I have all the space in the world. It's not to say I don't feel anything. I do feel things, but I now can have control over that part of myself rather than being controlled by it.
And so how did you create that space for yourself?
Well, through the work that I do, right? I mean, it's the only reason I do it is because it worked for me, right? Like I'm a person who, I'm not like a good liar, so, and I don't know that I really thought change was possible before I did this work, like real change, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. People could move, people could, I don't know, like get a new job, that kind of thing, look different. But I don't think I understood that like people could really change their personalities and really change how they act and react about things until I actually did. And so
until it happened. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's so many ways in which I've changed that I can't sing this song loud enough.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated what made you want to like jump in to do the work if you didn't think change was possible.
What makes all of us do the work? Tragedy, misery, unhappiness.
Yeah. Okay. So enough pain.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to like think of all the things that happened at once. I lost my dad. Well, he got cancer. I got pregnant in a really bad time in my marriage. We were like close to divorce. And then I got divorced and then my dad died and I lost my job.
Wow.
All within like a 2-year period, So it was for me really like the slate was wiped clean. Like everything that I had identified with. My job really too was a big part of that. I used to be in fashion. It was all gone. My father was gone. My children were gone half the time. My husband's, like marriage was dissolved, and it was sink or swim kind of thing. Yeah.
And do you remember the first moment when you realized, oh, change is possible? Like, do you remember?
I mean, the first personal development program I did really unlocked something for me. It really opened something up. And I was like, it just, I don't know, it hit the right nerve. It hit the right chord. And I was like, well, okay, I could do anything. Like I could look at this as a scary empty canvas, like if you're not a painter and you're looking at an empty canvas and you have to fill the whole thing, you're like, oh God, I don't know what to do, Or I can look at this as like a new beginning and a time of opportunity. And like, I could fill this in with whatever I want, And you know how it is. It's not like everything. It takes a long time to really believe that is true and to see it become true.
Yeah.
So it's, that first thing opened my eyes, but then it started to move me in the direction of more of this work, until finally I did this work. And then the real unlock was when I saw myself not reacting in the same way,
That's exactly what a client said to me this morning. She's like, I've noticed that I have that space in between, like the trigger and the reaction. I'm like, cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. That is when you know something is really changing, because you not only see that you're doing something different, but you see that the reaction is also different. And now the world is changing in front of your eyes, because you're like ready for that fight, or you're ready for that like argument to kick off, or you're ready for that next thing that always happens. And then it doesn't happen. And you're like, oh, is this interesting? Like, maybe if I do this again, things will be more peaceful, like, so it's an amazing experience.
It's so cool. In my head, I have this image of like a door opening, and you had like a little crack that you like walk through. Like, oh, maybe there is something on this other side of this, and let me just see what it is.
That's so funny. That's exactly what I said to my client today.
Oh, is it?
I said, it's like you open the door, and he's like, the door's really heavy. I was like,
kick it down.
Like, I know, but you did it. You opened it.
Yeah. It makes such a difference. Even to be like, I love to use the word when my clients start dating around, like, let's just experiment. Let's just see what happens. This is not, you're not going to marry the first guy maybe you will, but like, you don't have to have that pressure of like what it's going to look like. But like, what if you just were curious and had an experimental mind about it? Like, how would that be different for you?
Yeah. And that's a freedom that is hard to find when you're so attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
When you want to get married, when you want to have kids, when you're like, everything hinges on these outcomes.
Yes.
It's really hard to have that mindset, but that is the mindset, because if you're in curiosity, you're always open to what you find, if you can really stay curious without the lens of your wounds.
Well, this is I like this statement. And so like I want to talk about how do you do that? Like, what is the subconscious work, or what is the underneath work that people do so that you can stay with the curious mind and not have that lens?
Well, you have to be really open to, first of all, you got to know what your wounds are. You got to recognize that you have wounds. You got to recognize that you're not triggered just because somebody put the cup in the wrong place, right? You're triggered because there's something there that it means so much more than that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that I have to remind myself sometimes that like, I feel like I don't get enough help, right? Like, I'm a single mom, and I have 2 kids, and like nobody's like helping me. And I've had my time of being the martyr about that, but I've also had my time of yelling at everyone because nobody's helping me,
Yeah.
And so I have to remind myself when I get frustrated about little things like that, something being out of place, or the garbage hasn't been taken out, or whatever, that it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Really. And people are helping, and they're not purposely trying to hurt me or make it worse, right? Because that's what it felt like before when I didn't understand it. It was like, why are you doing this to me?
To me, yeah.
Yeah, And now it's just, all right, whatever, I'll just put the cup back where it belongs. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Nobody's trying to hurt me,
Yeah, they're not intentionally putting it there to hurt you.
Yeah. So, I think to really answer your question, first part of it is awareness, of course,
Yep.
And then it's digging into where that wound comes from, right? It's usually childhood something or other, maybe a relationship something or other, if you were in a long-term relationship that was really toxic or unhealthy, and then, processing that properly rather than just saying that a lot, like a lot of people do, like, oh, well, that happened and now I just got to move on to the next thing.
And so how do people, like if people don't have access to a coach or a counselor or something, how, like what can they do on their own to, one, I suppose, how do they locate that awareness of when things happened or what it was that happened, and how do they process it?
They can take my course.
Okay.
You can start with that. I think there's a lot available on the internet these days, honestly, to help you. And there are really, there's a lot of books you can read and a lot of information. And really, ultimately, it's digging into your own patterning. And understanding where that patterning is from. Like my whole life, I was told I look like my dad. Well, I not only look exactly like him, but I act exactly like him, and why did I have a temper? Because my dad had a temper, he had no space in between. He had no window of tolerance. I learned that. I thought it was normal. I didn't think anything was wrong with it, And so is it a shock or a surprise that I had no window of tolerance? No, absolutely not. But, and what I think this might help somebody for me saying this. I didn't think anything was wrong with it. I'm fine as an adult, right? Fine. But when I started to understand the impact it had on me as a child, right? That I was conditioned into believing this was normal, but how did I react the first time that I was maybe, I don't know, an infant probably, and he was yelling and screaming, I'm sure I wasn't happy, I'm sure it hit my nervous system. I'm sure my nervous system picked that up. And along the way, it got normalized in my nervous system and just kind of became part of life.
Yep.
But that was never a safe feeling.
Yeah.
But it's not something I understood because I didn't think that it impacted me that much. So what, I yell sometimes, so what? It's not that big of a deal. I love you, I'm cool. So what? That's just kind of how I react. So what, and that went on for a very long time, and so, yeah, it's really tracing it back and then understanding the impact it would have on a child, especially if you have kids. I feel like you can be a little more sensitive to that impact, but, and I did have kids when I realized, when I had to come to all of this.
I think that's a cool example because it feels to me like there's always these examples around us or these mirrors around us of how you're acting or what you're doing or the behavior. I have a client, this is so cool for her, but she has a niece that really reminds her of her as a child. And so it's such a cool mirror because it's actually allowed herself to have compassion for herself as a child, because the niece is the age when she can remember her being now as an adult, she has no compassion for herself in the way she acts. But when she thinks of herself as a child and this niece is there acting the same way, it looks the same as her. It's so cool for her that she's got this example in front of her.
Yeah.
But I love that so much. And I think what I want to add is, because for me, what's really important to be able to dig and do this work is space and allowing yourself the time to explore and understand things. Because before I did this work, I was someone who was very busy all the time. And that was just a distraction from the work, right? But it wasn't until I allowed myself to just have time where I wasn't doing anything, where my brain could actually be creative and think about things. And I'm not a journaler, but I tell people to journal all the time. But I'm a journaler in my head. I come to the conclusion, oh my God, that's it. But I needed space to kind of get there and understand that.
Yeah. No, quite frankly, I started this work in 2020.
Yeah.
This part of the work, I had started that that first personal development journey earlier, but the work that I do now, I started in 2020, which we all know what was happening then, right?
Yeah.
So we were all sat down.
Yeah. Yeah. That did create some space for people to do things. Because,
it did, yeah.
You and I feel like people had to sit with being uncomfortable through a lot of that because you were kind of forced to. So that was a beautiful part of it.
It was weird. So we don't have to talk about COVID. I'm happy to forget that part of life, but it definitely did create space for me to have, like you were talking about, like that space. Like I wasn't busy, I wasn't running around, and all I could do was be in my feelings because we couldn't leave the house and be distracted.
Yeah, exactly. You just had to be in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually think that I think this happens for so many people in different ways, that like if you don't look at it, it will come back and come back and come back till the truck runs you over and you're left dealing with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, that's why people come to us or to coaches and therapists in order to break these cycles, in order to not repeat this, thing that's constantly hurting you.
Yeah.
Like I was constantly in pain, like in a lot of pain. And it was pain I was causing to myself. And I knew that part. I knew that I wasn't in love with this guy or that guy. I knew that it was like the same thing with a different face every time, like I could feel that feeling. I could feel that pain, that longing, that desire, but it's not that I liked anyone, but it kind of almost didn't matter as long as they flipped that switch, that's it. I was attached,
The most powerful work that I do with couples is before they get into the stage where they're so resentful of each other, like where they're so fresh and they still love each other and there's still hope and they want to do the work, and like so much better work can be done when there isn't all this buildup of stuff, and the same with your own work. So
that's such an important thing to say because, I have people come to me after when they're resentful, when they're annoyed about everything. And there's been so much buildup, and it's so hard to untangle 20 years of mess. It's so hard to untangle 5-10 years of like bad communication and hurtful things said and bad patterns and stuff. It is so much better to start to open up and understand yourself and understand your partner from the lens of their inner child, from the lens of their shadows, because you have so much more compassion at that point, especially if that other person is also working on it.
Yeah.
It creates such a beautiful space to hold each other.
Yes. Yes. And if you're doing the work on your own, same thing, right? Like to hold that compassion for yourself, because
exactly.
you only know what you know. Like earlier when you were like, then you get frustrated because you wish you'd done it earlier, but you didn't have the knowledge earlier, like you just, this is the whole point of life, I think, is to just constantly grow and change. And sometimes annoys the hell out of my husband that I have this. He's like, I'm not in this work. I don't have to constantly. Yes, you do. Any other magical advice or wisdom that you want to give people that we haven't spoken about?
I think that it's really, the thing that I do focus on attachment styles, but I focus on attachment styles because it brought me to understand my subconscious.
Yeah.
And so I think that is really understanding, reading books about it, getting into the awareness of that part of yourself, because it drives like pretty much 98% of who we are. It drives everything we do. It drives the decisions we make. It is literally the driver of everything.
Yeah.
So actually, I think the advice is that you can start with your triggers. Where do you get triggered? Right? Really triggered. Like you get really annoyed, and start digging into why that thing is really bothersome.
Yep.
And not, if you're blaming, here's a tip. If you're blaming the other person, you're doing it wrong.
Yes. 100%. And that takes you having that space to even be triggered, and even noticing that you've been triggered, to then go, oh, what's behind this? Like have the curiosity around the trigger.
Yeah.
Triggers are exciting.
Yeah. We know though, right? Like I had a bus, long story, but I had a bus stop put in front of like literally directly in front of, not just in front of my house, but in front of my garage. They like drew the line like over my garage. Okay. I was crazy, like so triggered about it, but I couldn't pretend like I wasn't, like I didn't notice I was triggered.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed I was triggered.
Yeah.
And so did everybody else in the neighborhood. But, and then it's like, now I don't like feeling that way. I don't like feeling in that like, oh, I'm so angry, I'm so annoyed with it, and wanting to fight with everyone, so those aspects have changed a lot. But you do notice when you're triggered, I think most of the time, a lot of times you just think it's normal because it's how you've always been.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And will your ego win out and be like, well, that's just how I am. That's just who I am. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so anytime you're saying something like that, I would question that too. Like anytime those words roll out of your mouth or rolling around in your head, question it.
100%.
Why am I just like that?
Yeah. That was so my mantra as a teenager. I was convinced that that's who I am. No one's changing me. How dare you think that you're going to change me? You're so righteous.
I mean, teenagers.
Tell everyone how they can find you and work with you, and everything will be in the show notes, but tell them verbally.
Yeah, thanks. I am at redo.love on Instagram. Sorry, I'm like, what am I? At redo.love on Instagram and at redo_love on TikTok and redo love on YouTube. I just started my YouTube, so feel free to check into that. Yeah. And I'm, if you send me a DM and you type the word relationship circle, I will get back to you right away.
Amazing. And yet she's got so many good reels, so go on Instagram and check them out, because I went on before and I was like, oh, there's so many good ones here. Thank you so much, Flora. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Beck. This was super fun and great to see you.
You too. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you got value from this, please don't hesitate to share with a friend so they can get value from this too. And don't forget to hit follow so you don't miss an episode. It's also how I keep this podcast alive.
Audience exclusive.